Chapter 8. Elijah's Escape. Elijah made her desperate retreat across the river just in the dusk of twilight. The gray mist of evening rising slowly from the river enveloped her as she disappeared up the bank, and the swollen current and floundering masses of ice presented a hopeless barrier between her and her pursuer. Haley therefore slowly and discontentedly returned to the little tavern to ponder further what was to be done. The woman opened to him the door of a little parlor, covered with a rag carpet, where stood a table with a very shining black oilcloth, sundry lank, high-blacked wood chairs, with some plaster images on the mantel shelf above a very dimly smoking grate. A long hardwood settle extended its uneasy length by the chimney, and here Haley sat him down to meditate on the instability of human hopes and happiness in general. "What did I want with the little coz now?" he said to himself. "That I should have got myself treated like a coon, as I am this here way," said Haley, relieved himself by repeating over a not very select litany of imprecations on himself, which, though there was the best possible reason to consider them as true, we shall as a matter of taste omit. He was startled by the loud and dissonant voice of a man who was apparently dismounting at the door. He hurried to the window. "By the land, if this ye ain't the nearest now to what I've heard folks call Providence," said Haley, "I do believe that ours Tom's locker." Haley hastened out. Standing by the bar in the corner of the room was a brawny, muscular man, full 6 feet in height and broad in proportion. He was dressed in a coat of buffalo skin made with the hair outward, which gave him a shaggy and fierce appearance, perfectly in keeping with the whole air of the physiognomy. In the head and face, every organ and lineament expressive of brutal and unhesitatingly violence was in state of the highest possible development. Indeed, could our readers fancy a bulldog come unto man's estate, and walking about in a hat and coat, they would have no unopted idea of the general style and effect of his physique. He was accompanied by a traveling companion, in many respects an exact contrast to himself. He was short and slender, lithe and cat-like in his motions, and had a peering, mousing expression about his keen black eyes, which every feature of his face seemed sharpened into sympathy. His thin, long nose ran out as if it was an eager to bore into the nature of things in general. His sleek, thin black hair was struck eagerly forward, and all his motions and evolutions expressed a dry, cautious acuteness. The great man poured out a big tumbler half full of raw spirits, and gulped it down without a word. The little man stood tiptoe, and putting his head first on side, then on the other, and snuffing considerably in the directions of the various bottles, ordered at last a mint julep in a thin and quivering voice, and with an air of great circumspection. When poured out, he took it and looked at it with a sharp, complacent air, like a man who thinks he has done about the right thing, and hit the nail on the head, and proceeded to dispose of it in short and well-advised sips. "Well, now, who'd thought this here luck hadn't come to me? Why, Locker, how are you?" said Haley, coming forward and extending his hand to the big man. "The devil," was the civil reply. "What brought you here, Haley?" The mousing man, who bore the name of Marks, instantly stopped his sipping, and poking his head forward, looked shrewdly on the new acquaintance as a cat sometimes looks at a moving dry leaf or some other possible object of pursuit. "I say, Tom, this here's the luckiest thing in the world. I'm in a devil of a hobble, and you must help me now." Like enough," grunted his complacent acquaintance. "A body may be pretty sure of that when you're glad enough to see him. Something to be made of him. What's the blow now?" "You've got a friend here," said Haley, looking doubtful at Mark's partner, perhaps. "Yes, I have here, Marks. Here's that ar feller that I have in with Nazich." "Shall be pleased with this acquaintance," says Marks, thrusting out a long thin hand like a raven's claw. "Mr. Haley, I believe?" "Same, sir," said Haley. "And now, gentlemen, seeing as we've met so happily, I think I'll stand up to a small matter of treat in this here parlor. So now, old coon," said he to the man at the bar, "get us hot water and sugar and cigars, and plenty of the real stuff, and we'll have a blowout. Behold then the candles lighten, the fire stimulated the burning point in the grate, and our three worthiness seated round a table, well spread with all the accessories to good fellowship enumerated before. Haley began a pathetic recital of his peculiar troubles. Loker shut up his mouth and listened to him with gruff and surly attention. Marks, who was anxiously and with much fidgeting compounding a tumbler of punch to his own peculiar tastes, occasionally looking up from his employment and poking his sharp nose and chin almost into Haley's face, gave the most earnest heed to the whole narrative. The conclusion of it appeared to amuse him extremely, for he shook his shoulders and sides in silence, and perked up his thin lips with an air of great internal enjoyment. "So then, you're fairly sewed up, ain't he?" "Yes," said he. "It's neatly done, too." "This here young'un's business makes lots of trouble in the trade," said Haley dolefully. "If you could get a breed of gals that didn't care now for their young'uns," said Marks, "tell ye I think would be about the greatest modern improvement I knows on," and Marks patronized his joke by a quiet introductory sniggle. "Jest so," said Haley. "I never couldn't see it into 'em. Young'uns is heaps of trouble to 'em. One would think now they'd be glad to get clear on 'em, but they aren't. And the more trouble a young'un is, the more good for nothin' as a general thing, the tighter they sticks to 'em." "Well, Mr. Haley," said Marks, "just pass the hot water. Yes, sir, you say just what I feel and alas have. Now, I bought a gal once when I was in the trade. A tight likely wench she was, too, and quite considerable smart. She had a young'un that was miserably sick. It had a crooked back or something or other, and I just gettin' away to a man that thought he'd take his chance, raising on it bein' it didn't cost nothin'. Never thought, you know, of a gal's takin' on about it now. But Lord, you ought to seen how she went on. Why, really, she did seem to me the valley of a child more, 'cause it was sickly and cross and plagued her, and she wasn't making believe neither. Cried about it, she did, and lopped around if she'd lost every friend she had. Really was droll to think on it, Lord. There ain't no end to women's notions." "Well, just so with me," said Haley. "Last summer down on Red River, I got a gal traded off on me, with a likely-lookin' child enough, and his eyes looked as bright as yourn. But come to look, I found him stone blind. Fact, he was stone blind. Well, you see, I thought there warn't no harm in my just passin' him along and not sayin' nothin', and I'd got him nicely swapped off for a keg of whiskey, but come to get him away from the gal, she was just like a tiger. So it was just before we started. I hadn't got my gang chained up, so that she could get the ups on a cotton bale like a cat catches a knife from one of the deckhands, and I tell you, she made all fly for a minute, till she saw it wasn't no use, and she just turned around and pitches head first, young'un and all, into a river, and went down plump and never riz." "Bah!" said Tom Loker, who had listened to these stories with ill-represented disgust. "Shiftless both of you. My gals don't cut up no such shines, I tell you." "Indeed, how do you help it?" says Marks briskly. "Help it? Why, I buys a gal's if she's got a young'un to be sold. I just walks up and put my first fist to her face and says, 'Look here now. If you give me one word out of your head, I'll smash your face in.' I won't hear one word, not the beginning of a word. I says to him, 'This here young'un's mine, and not yours, and you've no kind of business with it. I'm going to sell it first chance, mind. You don't cut up none of your shines about it, or I'll make you wish you'd never been born. I tell you, they see it ain't no play. When I get hold, I makes 'em a wish of fishes, and if one of 'em begins and gives a yelp, why, Mr. Loker brought down his fist with a thump that fully explains the hiatus." "That's what you call emphasis," said Marks, poking Haley in the side, and going into another small giggle. "Ain't Tom peculiar?" "I says, Tom, I 'spect you make 'em understand, for all slaves' heads is woolly. They don't never have no doubt or meaning. Tom, if you ain't the devil, Tom, you's the twin brother, I'll say that for you." Tom received the compliment with becoming modesty, and began to look as affable and was consistent as John Bunyan says with his dogged nature. Haley, who had been imbibing very freely of the staple of the evening, began to feel a sensible elevation and enlargement of his moral faculties, a phenomenon not unusual with gentlemen of a serious and reflective turn under similar circumstances. "Well now, Tom," he said, "it really is too bad, as I always have told you, you know. Tom, you and I used to talk over these yer matters down in Natchez, and I used to prove to you that was made full as much, and was as well off for this yer world by treatin' on 'em well, besides keepin' a better chance for comin' in the kingdom at last, when wust come to wust, and thar aren't nothin' else left to get, you know." "Bah!" said Tom, "don't I know? Don't make me too sick with any of your stuff. My stomach is a little riled up now," and Tom drank half a glass of raw brandy. "I say," said Haley, leaning back in his chair and gesturing impressively, "I'll say this now, I always meant to drive my trade so as to make money on fust and foremost as much as any man. But then trade ain't everything, and money ain't everything. 'Cause we all's got souls, I don't care now who hears me say it, and I think a cuss sight of it. So I may as well come out with it. I believe in religion, and one of these days, when I've got matters tight and snug, I calculates to tend to my soul, and then them are matters, so what's the use of doing any more wickedness than really's necessary? It doesn't seem to me it's all prudent." "Tend to your soul," repeated Tom contemptuously. "Take a bright look out to find a soul in you. Save yourself any care of that score. If a devil sifts you through a hair sieve, he won't find one." "Why, Tom, you are cross," said Haley. "Why can't you take it pleasant now when a feller talkin' for your good?" "Stop that ar jaw o' yourn there," said Tom gruffy. "I can stand most any talk o' yourn, but your pious talk's that kills me right up. After all, what's the odds between me and you? That you care one bit more or have a bit more feelin', it's clean sheer dog meanness wantin' to cheat the devil and save your own skin. Don't I see through it? And you're gettin' religion, as you call it, after all, is too pissin' to mean to any critter. Run up a bill the devil all your life, and then sneak out and pay time comes bob." Come, gentlemen, I say. This isn't business," says Marks. "There's different ways, you know, of looking at all subjects. Mr. Haley is a very nice man, no doubt, and has his own conscience, and Tom, you have your ways and very good ones, too." "Tom, but quarreling, you know, won't answer no kind of purpose. Let's go to business. Now, Mr. Haley, what is it? You want us to undertake to catch this yer gal?" "The gal's no matter of mine. She's Shelby's. It's only the boy. I was a fool for buying the monkey." "You're generally a fool," said Tom gruffly. "Come now, Locker, none of your huffs," said Marks, licking his lips. "You see, Mr. Haley's a-putting us in a good job, I reckon. Just hold still there. The arrangement's in my fort. This yer gal, Mr. Haley, how is she? What is she?" "Well, white and handsome, well brought up. I'd a gin Shelby 800 or 1,000 and been made well on her." "White and handsome, well brought up," said Marks, his sharp eyes, nose, and mouth all alive with enterprise. "Look here now, Loker, a beautifully opening. We'll do a business here on our own account. We does the catchin', the boy, of course, goes to Mr. Haley. He takes the gal to Orleans to speculate on. Ain't it beautiful?" Tom, whose great heavy mouth had stood ajar during the communication, now suddenly snapped it together, as a big dog closes on a piece of meat, and seemed to be digesting the idea at his leisure. "You see," said Marks to Haley, stirring his punch as he did so, "you see, we has just as convenient all the pints alongshore that does up any little jobs in our line. Quite reasonable. Tom, he does the knockin' down and that are, and I come in all dressed up, shinin' boots, everything first chop when the swearin' to be done." "You ought to see now," said Marks in a glow of professional pride, "how I can tone it off. One day I'm Mr. Twickham from New Orleans, another day I'm just come from my plantation on Pearl River, where I worked 700 slaves. Then again, I came out a distant relation of Henry Clay, or some old cock in Kentucky. Talents is different, you know. Now Tom's roar when there's any thumping or fighting to be done, but a lion, he ain't good. Tom ain't, you say, it don't come natural to him. But Lord, that's a feller in the country that can swear to anything and everything, and put it all the circumstances and flourishes with a long face and carry it through better, and I can. Why, I'd like to see him, that's all. Believe my heart I could get along in Snakeville, even if justices were more particular than they is. Sometimes I rather wish they was more particular. I would be a heap more relishin' if they was more fun, you know. Tom Locker, who, as we made it appear, was a man of slow thoughts and movements, here interrupted Marks by bringing his heavy fist down on the table, as to make all ring again. "I'll do it," he said. "Lord bless you, Tom, you needn't break all the glasses," said Marks. "Save your fist for time of need." "But, gentlemen, ain't I to come in for a share of the profits?" said Haley. "Ain't enough we catched a boy for you?" said Locker. "What do you want?" "Well," said Haley, "if I gives you the job, it's worth something. Say 10% on the profits, expenses paid." "Now," said Locker with a tremendous oath, and striking the table with his heavy fist, "don't I know you, Dan Haley? Don't you think to come it over me? Suppose Marks and I have taken up the catchin' trade just to accommodate gentlemen like you, and get nothin' for ourselves? Not by a long chalk. We'll have the gal out, and you keep quiet, or you see, we'll have both. What's to hinder? Han't you showed us the game? It's as free to us as you, I hope. If you or Shelby wants to chase us, look where the partridges was last year. If you find them, or us, you're quite welcome." "Oh, well, certainly, just let it go at that," said Haley, alarmed. "You catched a boy for the job. You ailers did trade far with me. Tommen was up to your word." You know that," said Tom. "I don't pretend none of your sniveling ways, but I won't lie in my counts with the devil himself. What I sees I'll do, I will do, you know that, Dan Haley." Just so, I said so, Tom," said Haley, "and if you'd only promise to have a boy for me in a week, at any point you'll name, that's all I want." "But it ain't all I want by a long jump," said Tom. "You don't think I did business with you down in the Zatch for nothin', Haley. I've learned to hold an eel when I catch him. You've got to fork over $50 flat down, or this child don't start a peg. I know you. Why, when you have a job in hand that may bring a clean profit of somewhat about 1,000 or 1,600, why, Tom, you're unreasonable," said Haley. "Yes, and hasn't we business booked for 5 weeks to come? All we can do. And suppose we leave all and goes to bushwhacking round after you young uns, and finally doesn't catch the gals, and gals allers and the devil to catch, what's them? Would you pay us a cent, would you? I think I see you doing it. No. Flap down your 50. If we get the job and it pays, I'll handle it back. If we don't, it's for our trouble. That's fair, ain't it, Marks?" Certainly, said Marks with a conciliatory tone. "It's only a retaining fee, you see." He! We lawyers, you know. Well, we must all keep good-natured, keep easy, you know. Tom will have the boy for you anywhere you name, won't you, Tom? If I find a young un, I'll bring him on to Cincinnati and leave him at Granny's Belcher's on the landing," said Loker. Marks had got from his pockets a greasy pocketbook, and taking a long paper from thence, he sat down, and fixing his keen black eyes on it, began mumbling over his contents. "Barnes Shelby, country boy Jim, $300 for him, dead or alive. Edwards, Dick, and Lucy, man and wife, $600. Wench Polly and 2 children, $600 for her, or her head. I'm just a-runnin' over our business, to see if we can't take up this year handily, Loker," he said. After a pause, "we must set Adams and Springer on the track for these year, thinkin' been booked some time." "They'll charge too much," said Tom. "I'll manage that. They's young in the business and must 'spect to work cheap," said Marks as he continued to read. "There's 3 on 'em, easy cases, 'cause all you've got to do is shoot 'em, or swear they is shot. They couldn't, of course, charge much for that. Them other cases," he said, folding the paper, "will bear puttin' off a spell. So now let's come to the particulars now. Mr. Haley, you saw this here gal when she landed? To be sure, plain as I can see you." "And a man helpin' on her up the bank?" said Loker. To be sure I did, most likely, said Marks. She took in somewhere. But where is the question, Tom? What do you say? We must cross the river tonight, no mistake, said Tom. But there's no boat about, said Marks. The ice is running awfully, Tom. Ain't it dangerous? Don't know nothing about that. Only it's got to be done, said Tom decidedly. Dear me, said Marks, fidgeting. It'll be, I say, he said, walking to the window. It's dark as a wolf's mouth, and Tom, the long and short is you're scared, Marks. But I can't help that. You've got to go. Suppose you want to lie by a day or two till the gal's been carried on the underground line up to Sandusky or so before you start. Oh, no, I ain't a grain afraid, said Marks. Only what? Said Tom. Well, about the boat. You see, there ain't any boat. I heard the woman say there was one coming along this evening, and that a man was going to cross over in it. Neck or nothing, we must go with him, said Tom. I suppose you got good dogs, said Haley. First rate, said Marks. But what's the use? You ain't got nothing of hers to smell on. Yes, I have, said Haley triumphantly. Here her shawls she left on the bed. In her hurry she left her bonnet, too. That is lucky, said Loker. Fork over. Though the dogs might damage the gal if they come on her unawares, said Haley. That's a consideration, said Marks. Our dogs tore a feller half to pieces once down in Mobile, 'fore we couldn't get 'em off. Well, you see, for this sort, that's to be sold for their looks. That ar won't answer, you see, said Haley. I do see, said Marks. Besides, if she's got tooken in, 'tain't no go neither. Dogs is no count in these here states, where these critters get carried. Of course, you can't get on their track. If you only does down in plantations where slaves were the runs, has to go do their own running, and don't get no help. Well, said Loker, who had just stepped out to the bar to make some inquiries, they say the man's come with boats, Marks. The worthy cast a rueful look at the comfortable quarters. He was leaving, but slowly arose to obey. After exchanging a few words of further arrangement, Haley, with visible reluctance, handed over the $50 to Tom, and the worthy trio separated for the night. If any of our refined and Christian readers object to the society into which the scene introduces them, let us beg to begin and conquer their prejudices in time. The catching business, we beg to remind them, is rising to the dignity of a lawful and patriotic profession. If all the broad land between the Mississippi and the Pacific becomes one great market for bodies and souls, and human property retains the locomotive tendencies of his 19th century, the trader and catcher may be yet among our aristocracy. While this scene was going on at the tavern, Sam and Andy, in a state of high felicitation, pursued their way home. Sam was in the highest possible feather and expressed his exultation by all sorts of supernatural howls and ejaculations, by divers and odd motions and contortions of his whole system. Sometimes he would sit backward with his face to the horse's tail and sides, and then with a whoop and a somerset, come right side up to his place again, and drawing on a grave face, begin to lecture Andy in his high-sounding tones for laughing and playing the fool. Anon, slapping his sides with his arms, he would burst forth in peals of laughter that made the old woods ring as they passed. With all these evolutions, he contrived to keep the horses up to the top of their speed, until between 10 and 11 their heels resounded on the gravel and the ends of the balcony. Miss Shelby flew to the railings. "Is that you, Sam? Where are they? Master Haley's a-restin' at the tavern. He's dreadfully fatigued, missus." "And Eliza, Sam?" "Well, she's clear cost Jordan, as a body man say, in the land of Canaan." "Why, Sam, what do you mean?" said Miss Shelby, breathless and almost faint, as the possible meaning of these words came over her. "Well, missus, the Lord he persaves his own. Lizzie's done gone over the river into Hio as markably as if he did Lord took her over in a chariot of fire and 2 horses." Sam's vein of piety was always uncommonly fervent in his mistress's presence, and he made great capital of scriptural figures and images. "Come up here, Sam," said Shelby, who had followed on the veranda, "and tell your mistress what she wants." "Come, come, Emily," said he, passing his arm round her. "You are cold and all in a shiver. You allow yourself to feel too much." "Feel too much? Am not I a woman, a mother? Are we not both responsible to God for this poor girl? My God, lay not this sin to our charge." "What sin, Emily? You see yourself that we have only done what we are obliged to." "There's an awful feeling of guilt about it, though," said Mr. Shelby. "I can't reason it away. Here, Andy, you slave, be alive," called Sam under the veranda. "Take these your horses to the barn. Don't you hear master callin'?" And Sam soon appeared, palm leaf in hand, at the parlor door. "Now, Sam, tell us distinctly how the matter was," said Mr. Shelby. "Where is Eliza, if you know?" "Well, master, I saw her with my own eyes crossin' on the floatin' ice. She crossed most markedly. It wasn't no less nor a miracle, and I saw a man help her the heo side, and she was lost in the dusk." "Sam, I think this rather apricable. This miracle, crossing on floating ice, isn't so easily done," said Mr. Shelby. "Easy? Couldn't nobody have done it without the Lord." "Why now," said Sam, "it was just this yer way, Master Haley, and me and Andy, we come to the little tavern by the river, and I rides a little ahead. I'm so zealous to be catchin' Lizzie, that I couldn't hold in no way, and when I comes by the tavern winder, sure enough there she was, right in plain sight, and they diggin' on behind. Well, I lose my hat and sings out enough to raise the head dead. Course Lizzie, she hars, and she dodges back, and Master Haley, he goes past the door, and then I tell you, she cleared out the side door. She went down the river bank. Master Haley, he seed her, and yelled out, and him and me and Andy, we took after. Down she come to the river, and thar was the current running 10 feet wide by the shore, and over t'other side ice a-swayin' and a-jigglin' up and down kinder as were a great island. We come right behind her, and I thought my soul he'd got her sure enough, when she gin sich a screech as I never heard, and thar she was, shar over the side of the current on the ice. Then on she went, a-screeching and a-jumpin'. The ice went crack, quallop, crack and chunk, and she a-bouncin' like a buck. Lord, the spring that artist gal's got in her ain't common, I'm opinion." Miss Shelby sat perfectly silent, pale with excitement, while Sam told his story. "God be praised, she isn't dead," she said. "But where's the poor child now?" "The Lord will provide," said Sam, rolling up his eyes piously. "As I've been a-sayin', this yere's a providence and no mistake, as Mrs. has allers been instructin' on us. There's allers instrument riz up to us the Lord's will. Now if it hadn't been for me today, she'd have been took a dozen times. Wasn't if I started off the horses this yer mornin' and kept 'em chasin' till dinner time. And did not care Master Haley night 5 miles out a road this evenin', or else had a come up with Lizzie as easy as a dog after a coon. These yere's all providences." "There are a kind of providences that you'll have to be pretty sparing of, Master Sam. I allow no such practices with gentlemen on my place," said Mr. Shelby, with as much sternness as he could command under the circumstances. "Now there is no more use in taking believe be angry with a negro than with a child. Both instinctively see the true state of a case, though all attempts to effect the contrary." And Sam was in no wise disheartened by the rebuke, though he assumed an air of doleful gravity and stood with the corners of his mouth lowered in most penitential style. "Master quite right. Quite it was ugly on me, there's no disputin' that are, and of course Master and Missus wouldn't encourage no such works. I'm sensible of that, but a poor slave like me may's tempted to act ugly sometimes when fellers will cut up such shines as that ar's Master Haley. He ain't no gentleman no way. Anybody been raised as I've been can't help seein' that are." "Well, Sam," said Mrs. Shelby, "as you appear to have a proper sense of your errors, you may go now and tell Aunt Chloe. She may get you some of that cold ham that was left of dinner today. You and Andy must be hungry." "Missus is a heap too good for us," said Sam, making his bow with alacrity and departing. It will be perceived, as he has been before intimated that Master Sam had a naive talent that might undoubtedly have raised him to eminence in political life, a talent of making capital out of everything that turned up to be invested for his own especial praise and glory. And having done up his piety and humility, as he trusted to the satisfaction of a parlor, he clapped his palm leaf on his head with a sort of rakish, free and easy air, and proceeded to the dominions of Aunt Chloe with the intention of flourishing largely in the kitchen. "I'll speechify these years slaves," said Sam to himself. "Now I've got a chance. Lord, I'll reel it off to make 'em stare." It must be observed that one of Sam's especial delights had been to ride in attendances of his master to all kinds of political gatherings, where roosted on some rail fence or perched aloft in some tree, he would sit watching the orators with the greatest apparent gusto, and then descending among the various brethren of his own color, assembled on the same errand, he would edify and delight them with the most ludicrous burlesques and imitations, all delivered with the most imperturbable earnestness and solemnity. And though the auditors immediately about him were generally of his own color, it not infrequently happened that they were fringed pretty deeply with those of a fair complexion, who listened laughing and winking to Sam's great self-congratulation. In fact, Sam considered oratory as his vocation, and never let slip an opportunity of magnifying his office. Now between Sam and Aunt Chloe there had existed from ancient times a sort of chronic feud, or rather a decided coolness. But as Sam was meditating something in the provisions department, as the necessary and obvious foundation of his operations, he determined on the present occasion to be eminently conciliatory, for he well knew that although Mrs. Orders would undoubtedly be followed to the letter, yet he should gain a considerable deal by enlisting the spirit also. He therefore appeared before Aunt Chloe with a touchingly subdued, resigned expression, like one who has suffered immeasurably hardships in behalf of a persecuted fellow creature. Enlarged upon the fact that Mrs. had directed him to come to Aunt Chloe, for whatever might be wanting to make up the balance in his solids and fluids, and thus unequivocally acknowledge her right and supremacy in the cooking department, and all thereto pertaining. The thing took accordingly. No poor, simple, virtuous body was ever cajoled by the attentions of the electro-engineering politician with more ease than Aunt Chloe was won by Master Sam's suavities. And if he had been the prodigal son himself, he could not have been overwhelmed with a more maternal bountifulness, and he soon found himself seated, happy and glorious, over a large tin pan, containing a sort of olla podrida of all that appeared on the table of 2 or 3 days past. Savory morsels of ham, golden blocks of corn cake, fragments of pie of every conceivable mathematical figure, chicken wings, gizzards, and drumsticks, all appeared in picturesque confusion, and Sam, as monarch of all he surveyed, sat with his palm leaf cocked rejoicingly to one side, and patronizing Andy at his right hand. The kitchen was full of all his compeers, who had hurried and crowded in from the various cabins to hear the termination of the day's exploits. Now was Sam's hour of glory. The story of the day was rehearsed, with all kinds of ornament and varnishings, which might be necessarily to heighten his effect, for Sam, like some of our fashionable dilettanti, never allowed a story to lose any of its gliding by passion through his hands. Roars of laughter attended the narration, and were taken up and prolonged by all the smaller fry, who were lying in any quantity about on the floor or perched in every corner. In the height of the uproar and laughter, Sam, however, persevered in immovable gravity, only from time to time rolling his eyes up, and giving his auditors, drivers, inexpressibly droll glances without departing from the sensuous elevation of his oratory. "You see, fellow countrymen," said Sam, elevating a turkey's leg with energy, "you see now that this here child's up tear for your fendin', you're all yes, all on yer. For him as tries to get one of our people in as good as tryin' to get all you see the principles the same, that ar's clear. And any one of these yet drivers that comes smellin' round water, any of our people, why he's got mine in his way. I'm the feller he's got to set it with. I'm the feller for you're all to come to brethren. I'll stand up for your rights. I'll fend 'em to the last breath. Why, but Sam, you tell me, only this mornin', that you'd help your master to catch Lizzie. Seems to me your talk no hang together, said Andy. I tell you now, Andy, said Sam, with awful superiority, don't you be a-talkin' about what you don't know about nothin'. Boys like you, Andy, means well, but they can't be expected to colligerate with great principles of action. Andy looked rebuked, particularly by the hard word "collistit," which most of the youngerly members of the company seemed to consider as a settler in this case, while Sam proceeded. "Dat ar was conscious, Andy. When I thought of gwine arter Lady Lizzie, I really 'spected master was sort o' dat way. When I found missus was sot the contrary, dat was our conscious more yet, 'cause fellers always get more by stickin' to missus' side. So here I see is persistent either way, and sticks up to conscience and holds up to principles." "Yes, principles," said Sam, giving an enthusiastic toss to chickens next. "What principles go for it if he isn't persistent, I want her to know. Thar, Andy, you may have dat ar bone, 'tain't picked quite clean." Sam's audience hanging on his words, with open mouth he could not be preceded. "This yer matter about persistence, feller slave," said Sam, with the air of one entering into the abstruse subject. "This yer insistency a thing that ain't seed in the very clear, by most anybody. Now you see, when a feller stands up for a thing one day, and night the contrary the next, folks see naturally enough they says, 'Why, he ain't persistent. Hand me dat ar bit o' corn cake, Andy. But let's look inter it. I hope the gentlemen and their fair sex'll 'scuse me usin' no ordinary sort o' comparison here. I'm a-tryin' to get top o' der hay, while I put up my larder dis yer side, 'tain't no go, then 'cause I don't try der no more, but puts my larder side right on the contrary side. Ain't I persistent? I'm persistent in wantin' to get up which er side my larder is. Don't you see, all on yer? It's the only thing you ever want was persistent in, Lord knows," muttered Aunt Chloe, who was getting rather restive, the merriment of the evening being to her somewhat after the scripture comparison like vinegar upon nitre. "Yes, indeed," said Sam, rising full of supper and glory for a closing effort. "Yes, my feller citizens and ladies of the other sexes in general. I has principles I'm proud to 'em. They're prerequisite to desire your times, and ter all times. I has principles, and I sticks to 'em like 40, just anything that I think is principle, I goes into it. I wouldn't mind if they burnt me alive. I'd walk right up to the stake, I would, and I would. Here I comes to shed my last blood for my principles, for my country, for the gentle interest of society." "Well," said Aunt Chloe, "one of your principles we will have to get to bed some time tonight, and not be a-keepin' everybody up till mornin'. Now every one of you young uns that don't want to be cracked had better be scarce, mighty sudden." "Slaves on yer," said Sam, waving his palm leaf with benignity. "I give yer my blessin's. Go to bed now, and be good boys." And with this pathetic benediction, the assembly dispersed.